technical. I want to really look at it with an architect's eyes onto the buildings. So I always photograph it, as how an architect would look at a building. To take a good photo of a building, you just need to be at the right time, the right place, and what the tool you have is really not so important. Now I can really almost immediately tell that's the one. It's a combination of many things, and that goes easier and easier to know that's the photo. That's the feeling I have when I go to a building. Some buildings you feel very, very calm. The colors are a bit more muted. And I always say the same thing, and people always, oh, really, that one? I say Lipo Center. This should have been the blueprint of how Hong Kong buildings should be, at least in central MLT area. Many cities would dream to have this problem, so that's a really important thing to say first. Actually, location is everything. Everything. They build a theater or they build a sports stadium. It's not necessarily for the sports stadium or the theater. It's actually
Kris, when I started researching for this episode, I felt that there were a lot of parallelisms between you and me. In timing, I believe in age. I think we are around the same. I'm from '87.
Me too. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
When we got more or less when we got into China, and the fact that we have a state somehow around this area. Thank you for being my companion in the last meeting of this week, even though we are recording on a Monday morning in a Christmas period.
Thanks for having me.
Kris Provoost, you are, to my knowledge, you are the architectural photographer of reference in Asia nowadays. That's a very loaded award, but I think it's true.
Well, I will not say yes, but I mean, I just I don't try necessarily to be. I just do what I feel like I want to do. So I photograph my buildings, and clients come to me to ask me to take photos. I'm always very flattered if they come to me. So I just photograph it the way I think it should be photographed, and I continue my work, and it's very nice, and I enjoy it. And especially now that after COVID we can travel again, so I can go to different cities, and that's where it for me really gets interesting, because you don't just photograph a building, you actually photograph a building in the city. So the city's always different on many aspects, so that actually makes it a fascinating job. So I'm always happy to go to different places and really take on the challenge. So I'm happy with this job, actually. It's a good job. It's a nice job.
I envy you big time. For me, what I realized while studying, let's say, how I wanted to structure this conversation, was the fact that you are not only extremely relevant as a photographer, but as a witness of what happened in China in the last 30 years, especially when it comes to architecture. But at the end of the day, architecture is just one reflection of society, of the evolution of a country. And in the same time, and I wrote this yesterday night while my baby was crying, I said, good photographers are saving today's storytelling. Because at the end of the day, now, very little people, very, very few people have time or patience to read the headline and read the text underneath that and then continue and go in deep. So stories are often being told through pictures, through graphic media, which is very difficult. But I don't know, for whatever reason, when I was looking at your pictures, for me it was telling a story. We will get into China. We will get into the beautified China. But before, I'm very interested in how people get to where they are. So you get to China in 2009.
10.
2010.
Yeah.
Sorry, and you wanted to visit because you were interested in the developing architecture in China, right? Was it a holiday or what?
So
What was
I
it?
started. I actually graduated as an architect. So I studied architecture. I graduated in 2010, and when I graduated, I felt like I always wanted to live and work somewhere else.
Mhm.
I had never been to China before that, but I thought, okay, I will go to China. It was just the World Expo in Shanghai 2010. So I thought, okay, I will go there. I will go visit Beijing, Shanghai. I went to Shenzhen and then some other, like Xi'an. I went and some nature. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make my portfolio. I'm going to try to meet some architects. You never know. A bit naive perhaps, but I felt like, it's possible. It's an exciting place to be. A lot of interesting buildings going up. Because they had the Olympics in 2008, right? So they started in around 2001, 2002, even before I was really interested in architecture. When they got the Olympics, IOC announced that Beijing would get the Olympics. Then they started building like crazy.
Mhm.
And many foreign architects were building huge buildings, very interesting, very complicated, innovative buildings. And they were most of them were finished after the Olympics, because they always have the massive push, right, to get that. And Olympics usually also have a push to make the city look better, not in terms of buildings, but also in terms of infrastructure
Mhm.
and cleanliness. And I was so amazed when I was watching the Olympics, like in the bird's nest. I remember because it's funny. It's the only year I had to do an exam again during the holiday.
Okay.
So I didn't travel that holiday, so I was just home, and I basically saw everything of the Olympics, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I remember the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony in the bird's nest, amazing. And I was like, since then I've been kind of following what's happening in China. And then I graduated 2010, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check it out and see what happens. And then you know how it goes. I found a job, and I was like, I'm gonna stay for 3 months, maybe 6, and now it's 14 years later, and I'm still here. So I got really interested in China because they can do things at a massive scale. It can really transform the cities. They
Mhm.
really went from backwards to ahead of everybody right now, and I found this very interesting. And I thought, 2010 comes around, the expo, maybe this like revolution of building the craziest buildings will kind of stop, but it didn't stop.
Mhm.
They just continued. So when I started working in China, I wanted to really understand, what does it take to build a building of that scale? How big do things need to be? Because I grew up in Belgium. The tallest building back then was maybe 20 stories or something, and it's like in Brussels only, like where I grew up, tallest building maybe 10 stories, and that was like, already kind of out of the ordinary. So I had like no sense of how big things need to be. If you
Mhm.
build a 50-story building, how big does the lobby need to be? I had no idea. This is like 1 floor, 2 floor, 3 floor. How big does things need to feel? How big is the driveway? How big is the entrance plaza? How big is a panel of glass? Like, I had no idea, because they never taught me this in school, because 99.9% of the people
Yep.
will never experience something of this scale
Mhm.
when working as an architect in Belgium. But I felt, okay, I need to learn all these things. When I started going to visit all these buildings, I started taking some pictures, and I got really interested in like seeing how buildings, what the impact is of the buildings on the city, how people interact with it, how they get built. I'm very fascinated to see buildings under construction, because it's like an interesting moment in time where you can see how things get built before they get wrapped up
Mhm.
by a facade or by just cladding. So I just was out every bit of free time I had to go around the cities, and then started traveling by train, by plane to other cities, and I started taking photos of buildings, more really to understand first, and then I just became also interested in the photo taking,
Mhm.
and that's how Beautify China actually came. So for me, it was really to understand the city, understand architecture, understand the impact, and it's a sort of obsession that I never got rid of, and I'm very happy to. I'm still to this day. When there's new buildings going up in cities, I still go have a look at how things get done, and I find it very, very fascinating.
No, it's interesting. I want to dwell on that later, but before, I am very curious on the transition between being a practicing architect, because I mean, your resume is filled with big names in architecture, and you spend a significant amount of time actually. But how does so? I hear you start taking pictures, you start getting interested in how to improve probably your photography skills, but then you realize that can be a career. When and how you make this transition to full-time photography?
It basically just was a hobby. At that point, photography was a hobby that just got a bit out of control, because with the power of internet, I started, on social media, my Instagram, I posted a lot of photos, and then architects basically started asking if I can take pictures for them, which I was very happy that that it gets recognized and people see, okay, let's ask this guy, maybe he has a good eye on how to photograph this. So at one point I was combining the two, where I was working Monday to Friday in the office, and then I would sometimes travel Friday evening till I once flew back on a Monday morning and went straight to the office, because I was the whole weekend I was taking photos, and then then the clients ask when can we see the photos. So every evening I was working on those photos and trying to get it done, and then more jobs come. So it was a very busy, stressful, but actually very satisfying, very rewarding time, because you can see that something that I was not trained for, the photography part, that people start to see value in that, and they want to work with you, and that's a very nice feeling. Because I always said, okay, I'm gonna do photography, but I don't really want to learn the technical side of photography, because I don't want to make it too technical. I want to really look at it with an architect's eyes onto the buildings. So I always photograph it, as how an architect would look at a building, not necessarily how a photographer would look at a building, because they would. I can imagine, because I didn't study to be a photographer, but you can always hear photographers talk about the technical side of a photo, like the settings they use on a camera. I really I don't care about these things.
Okay.
I taken some of my best photos actually with my iPhone, because I really truly believe that you just need to take a good photo of a building. You just need to be at the right time, the right place, and what the tool you have is really not so important.
I see.
Yeah.
So
it just came as a hobby that out of control. Tried to, combine it too. It came a bit too much, and then I actually took 6 weeks of unpaid leave, and I gave myself, I'm gonna try this, see how it goes, because I was also a bit worried about I used to work for offices, and you have this kind of okay, I need to be there at 9, or in our case as architects usually more 10, and then you work till the work is finished. So you kind of have a framework you work in. But if you start working on your own, every day you're kind of you need to fill in, and you need to do things you don't want to do, and you do things that you really like to do. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give myself 6 weeks to figure this out, to see if I really enjoy it, and the traveling part, and the the coming home and doing the admin side and all that stuff. So I really enjoyed it, and then basically I went back to work after 6 weeks, and I quit.
And you say, this is done. I can do this.
Yeah.
Nice. But hey,
then that was I think it was April, May 2019, and then we decided to move to Hong Kong in July 2019, and then it was really, then it's like, okay, I give myself 6 months to see how this goes, really see if I can live off this, because then you move to the most expensive city in the world, a lot of pressure to make it work. Life is very expensive here, so it really started going well, like around like October, November, December.
Okay.
Then I was like, okay, this really goes well. And then we all know what happened in January 2020.
Yeah.
So then it was really, then basically everything shut down for me. I couldn't travel anymore, so I couldn't go to my projects that I needed to photograph. So every client started postpone. Back then it was still postponing stuff.
Yep.
Then a lot of stuff got canceled because I just couldn't go to the places. But yeah, it ultimately COVID was really a good time for me and for my business. Mentally it was tough, but actually the whole, I started thinking about like, what do I really want to achieve with my photography, try a lot of stuff out and see how to get better at stuff, how to specifically like look better at projects, how to take a photo that tells a good story. So COVID really made me maybe focus more on like just Hong Kong and really learn to look at Hong Kong, not just like the basic stuff that everybody sees, but to really, really look at Hong Kong. I had a lot of time because there's not much I could do anyway, so I really, went out every day to different areas and really look at Hong Kong. And I actually, at the time, it was a bit tough because, you worry about a lot of stuff. But looking back, it was actually a very good time to really learn how to take a good photo.
And how do you look properly at the building, or how do you look properly at Hong Kong? Because I love how you phrase it. Like there are so many things I would love to unwind, especially the hobby out of control. It should be the title for a memoir. But let's stay with the last one. How do you improve the way you look at a building?
I am somebody that spends a lot of time at a building. I really like to take my time, and I just keep walking around, because I feel like when you keep walking around, you will start to notice things, like how people move around, or how like the landscape sort of is around, or how buildings around it are in proportion to the building you're trying to photograph. So you really look and try to find these little moments, and that's, I feel, how you take a good photo, to really look at it. It's very hard to explain what you should pay attention to, but it's maybe it's how the sun moves on the facade, or how the proportion of the facade elements fit, or how the scale of things, or like all these. It's it comes subconsciously that I just see what works in a photo. Yeah.
So you go there, you said, I need to take my time and I need to look at it from a lot of different point of views. And then when I will find that special one, you recognize it because you have the eye.
In the beginning, I think that's with every job that you, or every sort of skill that you learn, is that you the more you do something, the more you recognize what is good or not good.
Yes.
I remember in the very beginning, sometimes on the weekend you take hundreds of photos, and it was really hard to actually judge which one is now a good one. Now I can really almost immediately tell that's the one. It's a combination of many things, and yeah, that goes easier and easier to know that's the photo. That's the one. And I still believe that, if you take a photo of a building, the actual building is maybe 50-60% of a good photo. It's what happens around is also very important.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I have one curiosity, because I mean, you have been very prolific, despite the fact that you moved here 5 years ago, almost 6. And but what I see throughout your work is that it is very difficult to classify, because on one side you wanna put it in the box of, okay, this is the testimonial, this is the witness of what's happening in a place, in a space. On the other side, the aesthetic looks so curated that you're tempted to put it also on the artistic box. Did you choose purposefully the type of style, the type of aesthetic that you were gonna have? These blue skies that highlight the building as if it was a sculpture, or is it something that came also naturally? You developed almost intuitively into it.
Basically, I always felt there's, let's say, Beautify China is one very artistic side, right? But my commercial work, I really feel the style that I go for this photo shoot is all defined by how I feel when I go to that place. So I don't usually always have the same style, like my, let's say, style or colors are all over the place. But that is really because that's the feeling I have when I go to a building. You know, some buildings you feel very, very calm, and you go for more calm perspective kind of feel, and the colors are a bit more muted. But some places you go, like, then they really try to, wow, like this, really impressive. And then I try to capture this like wow feeling. It's like because of the scale, but also like the sort of the complexity of the structure. So the style is really defining by how I feel in this place. And that's, like I said already before, when I travel to other places and the cities are all different, I find the most interesting, because then the aesthetic also for me should also change to the place you are. Like Hong Kong has a bit of rough side. I like to have a bit of a rough part in the photos. Shenzhen is then, for example, very made. It's really like organized.
Yes.
They try to be very clean and very like sort of monumental.
Feels a bit more like Singapore.
Yeah, because it's made. It starts from nothing. It's made, and you can really feel that when you go there. So I feel you should also. That's also how the photo should be. Chongqing, very different. Also very rough, very.
Wow, Chongqing. I wanted to get. I wanted to ask about this. It's humans versus city. Is the name of the project.
Yes. What I'm just trying to say is that every city has a different feeling. So the aesthetic of the photo should also feel the way the city feels. So I never want to, mislead the viewer. For me, it's really about giving an honest portrayal of how it feels to be in that place.
It is true. And I stand corrected, and I apologize, because actually when I took this note, I was on top of this book. And then later on, I started looking at the Chongqing pictures, and I started looking at even at the Hong Kong pictures in your website, which, by the way, makes you feel very close to whoever is visiting it, because you feel like you wrote the texts, and you feel like you have a very personalized opinion about this. So in the case of Hong Kong, what I liked about you is that you have an special ability to look at Hong Kong from the most beautiful side. We were mentioning before starting that what a lot of Western, let's say, co-nationals, or let's say our friends from back home, they have a very negative opinion of China and Hong Kong, because they have an opinion that is, at least to say the least, incomplete. You have an special, very good eye of taking that beauty out of Hong Kong, which means that you see it. And in the case of Chongqing, I've been to Chongqing only once, but yeah, it's when I saw the picture, especially when you portray people on the river, let's say in contrast with this super I don't know how to describe apocalyptic background, because I mean, especially the river sides are crazy. How who wins, the humans or the city?
In Chongqing's case, it's unfortunately the city, I think.
The city.
I try to go there every year to Chongqing at least once, and each time I'm still amazed by how this city works. The scale is just something else, and I like how the people are sort of forced to live there, and they accept it and sometimes don't accept it. You know how you have these massive density of the building and the high level differences that people have to endure every day, walking a lot of stairs and all that stuff. It gets also very hot in summer, very dusty also in summer, so it's a very rough place to live, but people sort of just accept it. But then what I really really like is that they sort of they accept the city, but then they still feel like we want to just take something for ourselves. That's why they go sit on like the riverbanks and just because the riverbanks, they're not like really made, they're just like because of the tide that the river, the water goes up and down. So in the evening, usually the tide goes down, and then they just like take it, and the kids run around and they put on like some picnic, or like even they take like a gas stove with them so they can have some hot pot. And I really like that they just take these little spaces for themselves, and it's like the rest of the city is not there anymore. They like live in this little bubble for a couple of hours. They just enjoy just being with the family or with friends, and after that they just go back into the city and endure the toughness and the roughness of the city. And I really really enjoy this. When just like a piece of rock comes available, they will like just take that rock and just sit there for a couple of hours. And I really like how this is still possible in the Chinese city. So many Chinese cities everywhere, it's all so made. Also Hong Kong actually gets really made. Like if you go to West Kowloon, go over the bench, and there will be somebody coming to you and say, oh, you should come back, or like don't, or like be careful like this. And it's all so
everyone is
made, so perfect. Like there's no like how many like in the city of Hong Kong, where can you touch the water? We have a beautiful Victoria Harbour, but you can never really be close to that water. It's like the water is there, but you don't feel really the water because you can't go close to the water. West Kowloon is maybe the only place where you can actually go to the water, but they don't really want you to go close to the water. And then you have Chongqing where they have the rivers, and people just go to the water. Like there are kids swimming in the Yangtze River. There's some like grandpas going to swim in the morning. I think that's really beautiful because they take this little space for themselves, enjoy it for a little bit, and then they go on and about with their life. And I think this dynamic I find very 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 nice. What makes it interesting in the photo is that then you have this massive city in the backdrop. You have this little bit of life in the foreground, but then you have this mega city in the backdrop. It just feels so, the contrast is so big between those two things, where people just like have a very family oriented moment, but then you have this rough city that is still like getting bigger and bigger every day. You have like trains running through, you have massive bridges, you have everything like state of the art, like cultural facilities, and it's like really, it's the contrast is so interesting, I find, about Chongqing.
It's very dystopian. It's like people get out of the movie and then they need to get back to the movie after a while. It's funny that you mentioned West Kowloon, because I was actually yesterday afternoon there just having a stroll with my family, and I was thinking that in Europe and in the US we give for granted these big public spaces because if you go on a Sunday afternoon to a park in any European city, it would be half empty or even more than half empty. here, I mean, probably yesterday, we had the Christmas
Yeah.
market and this and
Nice
this.
weather.
But most of the time on Sundays and Saturdays, these parks are. I mean, Sun Yat-sen. It's the same example. People go there with their tents and they spend time outside. It's like they're taking a break from enduring that hardship that they have in their homes. So these places become ever more meaningful, and creating this, I would say, extremely high level architecture. It's an amazing gift. One of the notes I took yesterday was that probably the buildings that you portrayed here for the Chinese, especially in the perspective of them building in 30 years what the West has done in centuries. For them, they're like the cathedrals of their time. So it's very interesting to observe their evolution. What is, let's say, your feeling of how does your heart beat when you go and you look at these buildings and these amazing huge masterpieces? Do you think this is something that that will be short-lived? Do you think that this is something that represents, as your friend Li Shichao said, the anatomy of excess, or is this something that it will set also the path for the future in China?
Some of them will endure. I think some of them are not that great and will sort of disappear. But I think the ones that are getting built nowadays are much better. Like you really can feel the skill is not only got better in terms of construction, but also in terms of thinking about the building and about like not going too crazy about things you don't really need. Like don't make buildings bigger than they need to be, or don't make them more crazy than they need to be. So I think in that regard, these will really endure and because they really make a city better. They really give it's not only about the building, it's about the space around it also. And a lot of space actually got really good. We have the example here of M+. M+ is standing there, is a really great building. But like for me, what's really nice is the lawn next to it and the staircase, where you can, if you in the evening go there and you can see the sunset. That's what makes a city work. These spaces next to buildings that work really well, or that give a backdrop to a building, or we have the amazing skyline there. So it's not just the building. It's there's a lot more parts next to it, or that are part of it, that actually make the building great. That's you can. For example, if we have quite a bit of like these iconic buildings in Hong Kong. If you look at IFC, that might work as a tower, but for the city, it's not.
Yes.
It doesn't. They put the tower on top of a mall. The mall, like, have you ever walked around IFC on the outside?
No, it's impossible.
No. Yeah, exactly. So it's really, it's like put into the city.
Yes.
But it's not really part of the city for the people. You make your way in the mall, great, nice, clean, beautiful, airy, bright, all that stuff. But as the way that the space it takes in the city fabric is really not for humans, huh?
No, I believe, especially, I love that you brought this up. I believe that IFC is very tyrannical. I lived in Lama 1 year, okay, in 2020. So I opened a consulting company in 2019, but between the protests and COVID, things were not going extremely well. So that paired with the fact that there were, let's say, pandemic restrictions, my wife and I thought that the best thing was to go to a place in which you could walk barefoot and go to the beach next. So we moved to Lama, and so I walk through the IFC mall every day. Now, if you are a person that either you choose not to be in the consumist wheel, or you have for whatever reason reduced economic capabilities. If the city is making you walk in front of the super top luxury shops every day, this is harmful to you.
Yeah.
And I think this is why I say it's tyrannical, because you are always being reminded by this building of what you cannot achieve. So I hate with a passion that place. I hate it with a
because
passion.
you are forced. Yeah, you know, architecture is never, like we already mentioned, never just the building. It's a lot, like the way it's set up, the way the spaces work together, how people move in and out of a building. And if you are, like, I've seen, maybe works as a mall, like for the developer to make money and for the brands to make money, but it's not really considered for the people per se. They force you to walk through, but they make it in such a way that it's like an airport. You are always forced to go through the shop. It's not, they don't give you another option.
No.
And that's really, architecture can go way above that to make it, to consider many other opinions. It's not only if you need to go from A to B, that it's only one way. Many buildings can give you many other ways, and people need to consider. When people ask me what is my favorite building in Hong Kong, maybe that's on your list.
But
and I always say the same thing, and people always, oh, really, that one? I say Lipo Center.
Okay.
Because there they really consider, the architect Paul Rudolph, great architect, he really considered different routes of how people go around in through the building. They really considered the bridges on different levels, the lobby, the little bit of shopping, the way you move through the city fabric is really cleverly done. And the way it's like split from the cars, and you as a pedestrian can really have a smooth, worry-free movement through the building without being forced to constantly be aware of things. You can really move through it with ease. And I feel this should have been the blueprint of how Hong Kong buildings should be, at least in central MRT area, where the cars and the pedestrian are split, but you make it a nice experience for the pedestrian.
Yes.
Like the Henderson is trying that a little bit. You have the bridges now.
I wanted to get to that, but yes.
So they continue from Lipo Center, and from the one behind it, I don't know what the name is there.
It's United Center. No.
Yeah, United Center, yeah. So imagine how nice it would have been if Central was this whole network of elevated bridges, and you as a pedestrian can just move around.
Yes.
At lunchtime, this would have been an amazing place. Instead, they built all individual buildings, and they still let cars run through.
Yeah.
I feel in our age, in 2024, there should be a way where shopping or pedestrians can be completely disconnected from cars and don't always need to wait at a traffic light when they move through a CBD.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's the ridiculous part about this whole thing is that you could argue, yeah, but that's very difficult because they have different landlords and different, how do you coordinate this? Central is one landlord.
Is it?
It's Hong Kong Land owns most of the buildings there. They can make this very easily. They try with these bridges, but I feel they could get rid of, why do pedestrians need to go to a higher level? And cars can have the free roaming of the ground floor. That just, if you think about it, it makes no sense, right? Because Hong Kong is such a pedestrian city. So many people use public transport. Why do pedestrians need to go to another level? Why do we need to take a stair or an escalator to go up before we can walk around? Why don't you push the cars to somewhere else? There in a way there should be no cars in Central.
I have the feeling that cars don't make any sense. I feel that this is a concession to a very, 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 very a small minority that still wants to park in front of the shop
Yeah.
that they go, which are, let's say,
But you can just push the cars underground and push them to B1, and then they can go out. Many places in Beijing, where I also used to live, there was one. You have the, let's say, for the common people, the shopping malls,
yeah.
and then you have the shopping malls for the rich people. And there was one next to where I used to work. There was a mall, and there was usually nobody, but they all had like the brand names, and we were always wondering, like, how does this mall make money? Like, there's nobody ever there. This was the most profitable mall in the whole of Beijing, just because the rich people with the car, with the driver, they go underground, they take the lift up to the shop they want to go. There's nobody there, nobody keeping, like, no paparazzi, nobody. They buy their stuff, go down in the car, out. Nobody sees them.
So this is why a lot of shops, they appear empty, but you say that they still have clients.
Yes.
That is crazy.
Most profitable in the whole of Beijing. So if they really want to make Essential like a ultra luxury thing, I think many celebrities would actually enjoy it more if they don't need to walk above ground.
Do you think that there will all? I mean, yeah, this is predicting something. It's a difficult question. Do you think that Hong Kong will have the courage to make this big change? I think, by the way, that Hong Kong is an amazingly built city, and for what reason? For the amount of years that it has been working, and I want to make this as a note on the side. If I am optimistic about the future of the city, which I am, is in a big percentage because I think it's extremely well built and no one is gonna get rid of it because it's just an amazing little pearl here on South China. But of course, it needs renovation and someone that is pushing behind with brains and courage. Do you think that this is a project that you are involved in big developments, and I'm sure that you talk to people that are in high places? Do you feel like there will be this change, this upgrade in the city?
Actually, first I need to say this problem is actually a luxury problem to have because we have a city that is like public transport is amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's the best in the world. Everybody uses it. All standings in life use it. It's really fantastic. So this is actually a problem that, or like the problem we're talking about now, many cities would dream to have this problem. So that's a really important thing to say first. I think maybe actually if the economy gets even tougher, maybe they are want to think more radically about, like, I think the main problem Hong Kong has been facing in terms of like the city building is that let's say it been a bit too easy maybe to that it, like, don't really need. It's funny to say, like, actually the most profitable malls in Hong Kong are actually the most run-down malls, like Harbour City.
Okay, it's still super profitable
because the location is great. They don't really have to keep it fresh.
I would imagine Times Square.
Yeah, but it's the same developer.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It does not really feel like
the need to date. Yeah.
I find it's quite interesting that you can argue as much about the malls and the shops and everything. Actually, location is everything. Everything. IFC is successful because the location is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, normally
Admiralty Pacific Place the same,
Yes.
Because you have the where all the subway lines come together.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting in cities, especially in super expensive cities. Living Singapore aside for a second, but I'm thinking about New York. I'm thinking about London. I'm thinking about Hong Kong ourselves. The common denominator is that many buildings are run down and the rent is so expensive, and people probably they don't maintain because they don't need to maintain. That's it.
Yeah.
Period.
But I mean, that's the funny thing or the interesting thing about Hong Kong is actually these rundown buildings give a certain character to the city.
Yes.
It's really, you know, that the streets are a bit dirty, or that like you have these small alleyways or whatever. That gives so much charm to Hong Kong. That's why I still really like Hong Kong, because you have this sort of roughness, you know. So I think they should never go to like really make it super clean or super new everything. Just give us this the little like roughness. I think Causeway Bay is a good example in this. You know, you have those like new buildings like I was it Lee Garden 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yes.
7, 8. I think they're building 9 or something now. And you have these buildings like dispersed over an area, but in between you still have these like low-rise houses, or like even if you go into Hysan Place and you look down, you see like these like dodgy roof gardens with whatever happens there. I don't know,
Yes.
but that sort of gives like a nice character to a place. So I don't think they should actually like erase everything and start over. That would not be good actually.
You still appreciate that, especially, you know, flying to China and coming back from China.
Yeah.
I actually that is links me to the next question. In this book, now my memory is failing me. I don't know if it's here or if it's no. I believe it's here. It's on the foreword that you wrote. I believe you say that local architects, Chinese local architects, are looking more not only at big, huge, standout architectural pieces, but also at, you know, renovating, restructuring. Don't you feel like also in Hong Kong the developers have been extremely, I would say, even criminal when it I use my words, not his words, but let's say there are some buildings that potentially could have been historical sites that they hadn't have the time to just get there, because some impatient people, they decide to tear them down and build something new on top of that.
Yeah, but that's something every city struggles with. You know, it's I think, yeah, Tycoon is really great.
Tycoon is
many
amazing. Yes.
many people now realize how great it is because of this mix between old and new.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel after this, there's a bit more sense about like, let's see if we're gonna tear it down, or we actually gonna regenerate it and give a new function to something. I think we'll get there. It just takes time. I think actually in Europe they went a little bit too far, where they want to preserve everything, even if it does not really have much quality, and that creates also problems.
Yeah.
So it's about finding the right balance between the two. So Hong Kong,
yes,
maybe a little bit behind. I think Shanghai has really nice spaces, old spaces they regenerate, and give a new function, change a bit here and there, like put some new like lifts and restrooms and stuff like this inside to give it like a new life.
Yes.
And it's not always architecturally the best solution, but at least they do it. So that's really good. But yeah, Hong Kong is difficult because, you know, this it's always driven about money.
Yes.
It's always driven about money, that maybe it's cheaper to tear it down and put some new stuff on top, and maybe this needs to come from the government, that they need to give more like a blueprint on what, or that they need to give incentives. Actually, the key is incentive. You need to give incentive that you know, if you say we keep this building, you can build some more GFA somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. I'm saying this because very recently I finished reading the Brutalism in Hong Kong book.
Yes.
I read. I mean, they go with my phone. Whoever is behind them, by the way, I would love to talk to them in the podcast. I reach out, but
to Bob. You should reach out to Bob.
If you can connect me, because I wrote to their Instagram. I wrote to the I think there is a website. but no one got back to me. And my only criticism is that it's all in Cantonese,
Yes,
which every page I have to like go and
translate,
translate. But it's an amazing book. Have this crazy thing about brutalism, but the pity is that most of those buildings are not with us anymore. It's like this is like an old archive. But yeah, I mean there has to be a balance, and me personally, I normally don't defend government intervention on anything, but in the case of architecture, I have to say it is the only solution. One example outside of Asia is the island of Lanzarote in the Canary Islands in Spain. I don't know if you've been there.
I haven't been to Lanzarote.
If
I've been to the other one. Was it
Fuerteventura?
No. Or was it? No, I went to Tenerife once. Yeah.
Tenerife. Okay.
Yeah, it's close to there.
Yeah. So if you ever have time, especially in winter, because I strongly suggest to go on Christmas, 25 degrees. It's an amazing place to be in Europe. I mean, it's actually Africa, but let's call it Europe. It's an amazing example of how something could have done very badly, and then they fixed it. So the island is very small. It's like 60 kilometers, and they have Arrecife, which is the capital, where the airport is, and that suffered the big development craze of the 80s. You know, starting to build tall buildings and horrendous hotels. And then this local architect called Cesar Manrique from probably well-off family, because he studied in New York, and at that time people that from Canary Islands went to New York, they had money. He got involved into political movements to try to preserve the local architecture, which is mainly integrating white buildings, small 1 floor, maximum 2 floors, within the lava rock surroundings. And he managed to convince everyone, and now if you go around the island has a lot of value, and it's not destroyed because they kept their aesthetic. So yes, I think that's something that people here should think about. Staying on sort of like this topic again, your friend Li Xin Chao, which by the way I want to repeat one more time, he wrote 2 amazing small essays for this book. Wrote, "We are keenly aware about the fact that this architectural excess, like the Gilded Age, is never meant to last." Do you agree or not?
It's actually, it's this. You need to always see it in the context of why they started doing it and what the effect was of it, and if they still need it in the future. So they really many of those buildings are that I photographed for the book. The idea is that they build a theater or they build a sports stadium. It's not necessarily for the sports stadium or the theater. It's actually to bring up the value of the land around it. So when I was still an architect, we did quite a bit of proposals where the landlord or the owner of I mean, you don't own land in China, but the sort of the developer wants to lease a piece of land, a big piece of land in somewhere on the outskirts of a city. The idea is always that it's to build residential. So I think that will now change. They will not do this so on this scale anymore. So they sort of go into an agreement with the government where they say, okay, you guys can build your residential, but in return you have to give the city a stadium or a theater or a museum or that kind of stuff. And that's kind of a win-win, because the city and the citizens get a cultural facility that would otherwise cost a lot of money, and the developer builds something that actually brings up the value of the apartments around it. So it's a good deal, I feel. I mean, it still need to make sense. You don't need to build like a massive amount of residential and then give only a few like public spaces back to the people. You need to make it a good city,
It's good
like a
proportion.
balance, a good
Yes.
balance, right? But I think it's the right way. So a lot of these buildings are built for that. I think if they would, just build the building for the building, I think that's a bit excessive. So the idea that is like, it will not last, it comes a bit from this, that they now have all this stuff. They have a lot of stadiums, they have a lot of musea, they have way too many musea actually. They have a lot of theaters, a lot of all these kind of
Yes.
yeah
Badminton.
all,
Sports
like
center.
everything. They have
Yes.
way more infrastructure, like sports infrastructure, than Hong Kong has in many Chinese cities. So it's just a normal evolution, because these cities were back then underdeveloped and now perhaps a bit overdeveloped.
Yeah.
They have a lot of metro lines. They have everything state of the art, like big roads, big highways, everything. So it's just meant to be that they will not build that many of these sort of iconic buildings, because there's no need for it. So it's a normal evolution. I think that in the future they will still keep building certain buildings, maybe, I don't know, 10% of what they built before, but the quality will be better, because they also learned from before how to build stuff, or how to organize these kind of buildings in terms of like their function. And now what they build now will actually be much better quality in every aspect, and that's something I'm actually excited for. Maybe if there is any silver lining about like the crisis in China, is that actually the quality of the buildings will only get better.
100%. And
Mm.
also, I'm fascinated about Chinese society, about how they evolve extremely rapidly. I always joke about the fact that, if you think you know China 5 minutes ago, you don't know China right
Yeah.
now. And I saw an evolution because of the crisis, also because of the pandemic, by which Chinese citizens, again, maybe this is not a sociology report, this is just my personal independent point of view, but my small human sample, the people that I talk to, they've become more mindful, more reflexive about who they are and the place in the world. And I think that takes ultimately to requesting, demanding more quality, to saying, okay, we're going to build less because we don't need that much, and people are pushing back against that consumism that they had before. So less with higher quality. I think that's probably the next evolution. Another one of the essays that let's say confirm the text of the book. Right, European culture believes itself to be universal. This is just the first part of a phrase that then continues about the fact that the Middle Kingdom also thinks about that they are the center of the universe. Do you think that now, compared to 2010, when you moved there is more openness in Western academia regarding Chinese architecture and how it's developed, or do we still live in an obscure age in which people don't pay attention to what's happening here?
I think they are more open to at least hear or see about it. I don't necessarily think they would do it the same way, like to build, but I think they're more open because they also see. I mean, if you see, you can, in architecture, you can talk and you can actually do, So if the talking that people are a bit like not really accepting or everything they say is one thing, but you need to to respect what is getting or what has been built. So I think in that regard they Western or like European at least, they are more respectful to, okay, wow, they actually managed to build all that stuff in a short time, and they have the skill, they have the know-how, they know all this stuff. So I think in that regard, I'm much more open. I'm not necessarily think they would do it or build the same way, but I think they would try to learn from it and then give their own spin on it. And I think that's fine. I think every part of the world has their own, history, their own way of thinking, the way of doing, and that's perfectly fine. I think it's not I mean, I hope we don't go to a world where one part of the world will demand the other part of the world to do it exactly this way, or the other way around. So I think we just coexist with each other, also in like not just in like normal life, but also in architecture. Just learn from each other, and hopefully we can make the world a better place. Because Chinese architecture, they really got so far ahead, and they're still, I mean, every country has still like problems in the way we build and all that stuff in terms of like sustainability, but at least they already also think about like how to make more sustainable buildings, more be mindful about the materials you use, or rationalization in terms of like complexity, that kind of stuff. They really learn a lot already. So I think it's only good for the world that China also builds better buildings.
I mean, for me, they are the spearhead of humanity nowadays. I always, I remember last time I was in Shanghai. I think it was end of September. I called my wife and I said to her, every time I come here, I feel like I'm traveling to the future.
Yeah.
It's like the way they pay, the way they move, and every time is something new. By the way, I'm not that old, but I feel old every time I go there.
Yeah.
Like really, I need to learn a new thing. So I don't want to put that responsibility on their shoulders, but I think they have that role in the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Let's say how to teach us Europeans or Americans that
efficiency is crazy, right? I think the best example is like online shopping. It's crazy how efficient they got and how good the customer service has gotten. I don't know if you order a lot from Taobao.
My wife normally does the ordering.
Yeah, I mean it's, and now they expanded basically free delivery to Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Western online shop that can beat this. It's impossible.
Yes.
Because the customer service it's fast, it's cheap. I mean, there's no delivery fee, so that's great. And the service is just so good. If they make a mistake, they will immediately correct it.
Yeah.
If the delivery guy did something wrong, they will immediately like correct it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember before, like if you order something online on a Western shop and it's not exactly what you order, oh my God, it takes you
forever.
Yeah.
So the point is making you desist in the claim sometimes.
Yeah.
It feels like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Western shops are it's just a matter of time before they all go bust, because just I mean, for the customer, it's really like they always say customer is first, but there it's really customer is first, and you can just not beat it. You cannot beat it. Go to it's cheaper to buy a food from a supermarket in Shenzhen than it is to walk 10 minutes to the supermarket down the road and get shitty service, and
100%.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a whole different discussion about like customer service in Hong Kong, but it's nice when you as a consumer gets like good service, right?
But it's super important. It's super important. As I said, despite the moment that we're living in, I'm very optimistic about this city. The only thing that worries me a little bit, and this is going to be a segue into the next thing I want to talk to you about, is housing. Before sitting here, we were talking about the fact that having this space to do a podcast or to do whatever, or to have a studio or something is such a luxury, because people are confined into very, very small spaces. Now, this links to your project 18 of the Orient that you did, if I'm not mistaken, during COVID, going to these 9 new cities in Hong Kong, in which you have a lot of people living in a very small area, in small apartments, small cubicles, up into the air. Is this sustainable in the long term? Like, is the value proposition of Hong Kong, now that it's not the gateway into China, strong enough to motivate people to live in such conditions?
Yeah, that's. I mean, if there's a solution for it, if I would have the solution, then is there a solution to this problem? I don't know. Is there a solution, or they don't want to see a solution? That's the whole, I think, in a way, if you need to live in a small space because whatever, like, economical or social thing, at least provide a lot of public space
Yeah.
that you can spend time at. Especially if you have kids, give them space they can run around. Like where we live, they just built like a new, quite a big playground actually. So I mean, at least you need to give those little things, or like give them good public transport that they can go. The thing with Hong Kong is always like we live in very small spaces, but we do have the nature very close by.
Yes.
And that's an amazing feature that I think no other city has this, or like no other mega city has this. So at least we have this. Of course, I would also love to have a lot more space. I would feel much more, I say, maybe creative, even if you have more space, or just mentally stronger. But yeah, that's how it has come, and it's a very difficult one. This one.
I mean, if you you can tell me, Fernando. If I had a reply, I would be a millionaire. Probably yes. No, but my worry is this. Again, going back to the value proposition thing. Hong Kong in the 80s, in the 90s, made total sense. And you live in small spaces, but you're making a sacrifice to do business in China, to have access to financial markets and whatever else is happening around this context. Now, China is open all in the perimeter. So the existence of Hong Kong, that value proposition, they need to change. And it's getting more and more tempting to go somewhere else. For example, Bangkok, in which you have still this regional reach, but you can have big spaces and you can have different opportunities. Do you agree or do you disagree?
It's a very, very difficult, very difficult topic, because it's this. I still think Hong Kong has a lot of value. I mean, the financial sector is still a lot bigger than anywhere in China.
Yeah.
I mean, they really tried Shanghai to make it bigger, but Hong Kong is still enormously bigger. The harbor is getting less important because Shenzhen also getting a big harbor. But I think it's really I think it would be a different talk if they suddenly increase the taxes. I think the many businesses, Hong Kong has more companies than people.
Yeah.
Because of the taxes, right? So
yes.
I mean, people, it's something you need to balance off for everybody. For everybody is different. For me, it works still. The value Hong Kong brings and the life we can have here is for me makes still sense, but I can imagine for other people maybe not, and that's perfectly fine.
Yes.
So maybe it's just if you're a certain age that you can accept this. Maybe if you get older, you cannot accept that this.
Yes, exactly.
So it depends from person to person. I think it's not something that it can be generalized for everybody.
No, 100%.
So it's for. Yeah, and then I mean, Hong Kong, the population I think will go down a bit. So maybe we do have a bit more space in the future, or the price will get a bit down, or the quality of the apartments will get a bit better. I don't know.
No, I am optimistic about Hong Kong precisely because I think in the short term things will go bad, and then we will have I mean, economy wise, rent wise, and so on. And then they will have to find improvements.
Yeah.
And maybe this new reclaimed area to the sea next to the airport will, let's say, give better different spaces. I mean, for me, I still find good value in living in Hong Kong. I was thinking precisely in those people maybe living in 300 square feet, 500 square feet, families cramped up in a building, because I think for society that conditions a lot how people's personality are. One of the great things about Hong Kong is that, for example, especially in Central or let's say Hong Kong Island, everything is so vertical that then when you are in public spaces, shared spaces, restaurants, theaters, whatever, shops, you are rubbing your shoulder next to someone of any society's category, with with a carpenter or with a CEO of a bank, and I think that creates great connection, great connectivity, which makes the city very special. So I think that's the good side. The bad side is that if you have a lot of the population living in conditions that are not, how to say, suitable for mental well-being, then that has also an effect in how rude people can be. I'm not saying people are rude, but let's say how stressed they are. So this is what I mean about sustainability. I look at it from this angle. Like I think Hong Kong has the potential to be an amazing city, but I think it has to focus a little bit more on well-being on the people living here, to let's say to gain some of that value proposition. We will see. You are still, let's say, I mean, the city is still growing, and we are still building stuff. Henderson is a very busy developer in the Central District, and you did an amazing project with them, which is not only taking pictures of the finished thing, but as you mentioned at the beginning, doing something that you like, which is going to the job site. From the reader's position, still had a lot of protagonism also in the project. How did this project with the Henderson came to be?
Actually, I photographed for the glazing manufacturer.
Yes.
So, I mean, Henderson is very fascinating project, because it's I know maybe I overthink too much the things, but I always like to see things in the context, and not just in the build context, but also in, let's say, the time we are now. So I think the Henderson is very fascinating, that they build something this complex, this difficult in this time, so I felt Hong Kong, maybe the architecture was a little bit stuck in the old ways. So I'm very actually positive that grateful that this developer took this step to build something this complex, and really, in to take Hong Kong, or at least show to the world, Hong Kong can still do it, because the Bank of China, the HSBC, they're built in the 80s, right?
Yep.
Since then, IFC is 2000, beginning of 2000, I think. IFC 2005. But since then, there's not been really that much innovative stuff, at least in skyscraper wise.
Yep.
So they built this Henderson, and really can show, this Henderson Tower is really advanced, probably more advanced of anything they built in Shenzhen, for example, because of, you can feel the money basically on that tower, right? Just the glass, the complexity, the curvature, all that stuff, the location, the standing of that tower. And it's nice that they can build an icon next to another icon, that really shows our current time. I think it's in that regard, I really like that tower for the meaning it has.
Yes.
For Hong Kong.
It is crazy when you experience Admiralty, and before they built the Henderson, I would have never thought they had space to build another building in there, and they fit another one. And now you're thinking, okay, if I follow this reasoning, maybe they will build something close to it. I mean there is still a space if they want.
They can always make space. They demolished like a parking garage
Yes.
before, or what was there before. So yeah, actually the fact that it was such a small site made it even more complex to build.
Why is it that you're an architect and you can tell us some secrets? Why is it so special? What makes it so difficult?
It's mainly the glass.
Mainly,
The
okay.
glass is very complex. So I think it's, I don't know how many layers it is, but it's very thick glass,
Mhm.
and because it curves, and because it's especially on the top part of the tower where they have if you ever have a chance to go to that ballroom, the view is amazing from there, because they built this glass, super tall glass, curved, good for the environment. How absurd this sounds for the fact that it's glass in a hot climate, but also typhoon resistant.
Yes.
So it's really complex glass. So it's more complex than any Apple store around the world right
For
now.
sure.
So they really took the investment to make these kind of glass. And I like, it's with a lot of stuff. For example, how they pour so much money in like Formula One,
Mhm.
and that trickles down into like normal cars for normal people.
Yes.
Slowly. This is the same with architecture. It's these kind of masterpiece projects where they pour a lot of money in like developing something complex that will actually make the glass of the future.
Or the future buildings.
Yeah. And I
Yes.
think that's really great. And that's also a fascinating part about these iconic projects, that they can really push it forward. That's why I really like Apple stores, because they really they invest the money to develop this glass,
Yeah.
and then they slowly make it a way
Into other
more
spaces.
normal projects. If you compare an Apple store from 15 years ago, like beginning of the year, I was in Beijing, and I was photographing a Huawei store.
Okay.
And opposite there was an Apple store. And usually like an Apple store is like, wow, it's like nice glass, super clean. But this store was like, I don't know, 10, 15 years old or something. And this Huawei store felt like miles ahead of like the Apple store. So you can really feel like almost a generational like divide between
Yes.
what was avant-garde or like advanced back in like 2000, I don't know, 2005 or 2010 or something, and what they achieve right now.
Mhm.
Like super tall glass, curved, very crystal clear, like it has no color
Yes.
difference, and it's like really the way you look at it, the way the sun touches the glass, like the sort of, yeah, just the clarity of that thing. And you see how it was, what was considered like really advanced 10 years ago, and what they do now. I think it's very fascinating. That's why I like these kind of projects, and I think in that regard Henderson is already a very successful project.
Nice.
Because the glass is very good. And then also then I go back as a photographer, if you look at that thing, that the glass just looks really good.
Yeah, it looks different. It looks like a jewel, like a sapphire or something.
Yeah. It is one thing that can really make me annoyed as a photographer is the quality of the glass. Yeah.
Okay.
I really start to see like the developers in Hong Kong for residential like to use this greenish glass, which looks very cheap, which is also kind of cheap. Looks terrible in photos, but somehow this became like the
standard.
Yeah. And then you have like or like on office towers, maybe in most times it looks good, but if certain sun goes on it, there's like a wobble in it, and the reflection of the buildings next to it is not a straight line, but it becomes like a jagged line.
Yes,
and this really
yeah.
like glass is something that you can tell if the developer or the owner really cares about their building or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe it
interesting you
goes
say
back
that.
when I was still an architect for the one project we did. I was put in charge of getting samples of glass from
Can you
manufacturing.
put this a little bit?
Sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
The like quality of the glass can really define how your building how your building looks like, and the there's a lot of difference in glass. Really, it defines, and because it goes onto such a big surface and it has such an impact on the city, good glass is really important.
It's funny you say this, because when I was looking at the Henderson, I'm an aerospace engineer by trade, so I thought at the beginning, it's crazy the wind loads that these panels need to have, especially on the upper floors, and especially being so big, because the possibility for flexing is crazy. But I didn't look at it from the quality aesthetic perspective, which is, now that you think about it, it is true. It is, let's say, perfectly shiny, like on a different type of level compared to even the Lipo Center. As much as I like the Lipo Center too as well.
The glass is from the 80s. You can see the glass is not good, you know.
Yes.
But maybe back then it was considered good.
Well,
but I like that you see this. You see that humanity in that regard, you know, gets better and better and more advanced.
Yes.
And I like how there's a constant push to make things better, and that's really great. You know, like Bank of China Tower is the glass is maybe not great, but it looks really good. Like in the overall thing.
Yeah.
The Chongqing Center next to it, the glass is much better. Facade, I like the facade, but the overall building is quite simple. So it's really, and I think in the Henderson it just comes together, everything. It's nice. Yeah.
Very nice. Are there any other exciting projects in the region that we should be paying attention to? There is a Cloud 9 or Cloud 11 by Snohetta in Bangkok.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, they're building this Shanghai Opera.
Yes,
that looks nice. Yeah, I went to the construction site before. It's very impressive, but I'm a bit worried. They always say, "Oh, it's not going to be a problem," but knowing China, I think it might be a problem. They have this like big staircase that goes to the roof, and they tend to like put a fence around it at the end. So I'm really worried that, you know, they built this big staircase that in the end they will not let people use it. I'm maybe a bit too skeptical about this, but let's see how it.
Really, from safety reasons or something.
Yeah, safety is liability issues, because they really can. If something happens, then the owner is responsible. Also here in Hong Kong, actually, they are so worried about like kids hurting themselves or. You know.
Yes.
Another one I think is quite exciting is I don't know if you've been in Shenzhen Bay, like next to the China Resources Tower and the MixC there. They're building like a cultural center that looks like giant stones.
Okay.
By a mad architect, Ma Yansong from Beijing. That looks really cool, actually. The renderings look amazing. So now they are building this thing. So I'm quite excited for that one.
All right.
Any other ones? Let me think. There's still like so many actually. Need to. Every city has.
Anything that you are working on that is going to come up in the near future?
Need to think actually.
But if not, we can always say to people, stay tuned, follow.
Yeah.
Not that he needs any more followers, because he's a celebrity.
Yeah. Can always be more. Can always be more.
It can always be more. No, it's interesting.
I like now. I've got a bit. Now that I travel again, so I like to take photos of like buildings under construction. And now, because I travel quite a lot, I go back to these places, and I was like, I should go actually have a look at this building, and then I can like compare the exact same angle before and after, and then I can make like a, in Photoshop I can sort of blend it together, and it's nice because I still believe that some buildings look better under construction than they do when they're finished. So I think it's actually interesting to see, or like when you see how it would look. Let's say part of the photo is like completed, and then part is still under construction, and you can see how like what behind it. I took like back in the day when M+ was under construction, I photographed it when part of the facade was not on. Like you have of course the horizontal part where the museum is, and then you have the the vertical part.
You see the staircase.
Yeah, and you see the staircase, but when it's finished, you don't see it, you know.
Yes.
And I thought actually that is my favorite part, the staircase, like because the tower is very slim,
Yeah.
so you have just like one staircase
Yeah.
going down, and I thought that was very nice. And now you don't see it anymore, so it's like you will never see it anymore.
Yes, I had the same observation. I mean, I observed that when I was looking at the picture. I think it's either on your website or I mean, probably on both, on your Instagram. No, it's super nice. Kris, it's been super nice talking to you.
Yeah.
I don't know where you live here. Later you can tell me, because otherwise people will go and follow you to your home. But I would love to hang out with you sometime and enjoy these few beers, which by the way I would have, but you know they're very warm. Take a look.
Yeah, it's a bit too warm.
They're winter temperature.
Also, it's Monday morning.
It's Monday morning.
12
yes.
o'clock.
Even though we're going to pretend it's Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
So we are, and on Christmas time, when I don't have a big gathering, I try to be healthy around those big gatherings, because otherwise there is too much eating, too much drinking, too much sugar, too much everything. Yeah. One question for me that probably for people watching the podcast is useful. Is there anywhere that you sell prints of your work?
Oh, that's something I've been putting off. I sort of reorganized my art photography, if I can call it like this. So I made recently like a new website, and I was gonna expand it with a print shop. So
would be nice. Because I mean, not like this is like you do better pictures. But that's
a nice building, yeah. I went there as well. It's in
Avilés, in Asturias.
Oh no, it's not this one. Oh, it looks exactly the same.
So this is Niemeyer.
It's not in Brazil, right?
This is
it's
Niemeyer.
A Brazilian architect.
Yes. He designed the building when he was alive. The building was just completed after he passed away. And this used to be. This is actually. I'll show you the pictures. I mean, the sky where I come from in northern Spain, maybe once per year looks that blue, so probably that has been a little bit photoshopped. But the surroundings, the context is a reclaimed industrial area in which they made this cultural city, and they make exhibitions, they make plays and so on. And this is actually the theater. There is another tower. I think is very nice. I like Niemeyer. I like the architecture, and so it made me remember home. But
concrete looks
nice.
That's another obsession, like concrete, like texture of concrete. It's a bit like brutalism, but like concrete looks quite nice on this. That has a bit of a texture and a bit of a. Even
though the painting, a bit of wear down.
The painting.
But the paint is probably it was not the best solution from an aesthetic point of view, but no, but it's nice. I invite you to go. I'll share with you the location, because northern Spain like a micro proportion compared to China. We went through also some regeneration of our architecture, especially public buildings. With the money we got from the EU when we entered the EU.
That's what you spend it on. Okay.
You spend it in this. Yes.
That's what we all pay for.
I know. This is a new road. No, it's true. It's true. Now when people in Spain complain that we are spending too much to Eastern Europe and it's gonna cost us money, it's like we should stay silent.
Yeah. Yes.
We should not say anything. But
Belgians are like, we always pay for everything. We pay for. Like when was it? Like Greece had this economical crisis in what was it,
2010.
10, yeah. Also had the bailout, and now Ukraine, and
I know.
It's a whole other discussion.
Let's
not get into this, because that's really.
You can come anytime to discuss with or without the camera, but for sure we'll be at the new studio. Well, nice. Thank you one more time, Kris. I hope you enjoyed.
Yes.
Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure spending time with you, and for everyone that made it to this. Now it's a Friday evening, so enjoy the weekend, be happy. Merry Christmas. I hope you were good and you will get a lot of gifts, and if not, like in Spain, you will get some coal, but it's sweet coal. It's a weird tradition. Thank you, everyone. Have a good
weekend.
Ciao.